What section?
I can look it up.
Yeah, let's have a look.
But I'm not going to, because I'm going to just require this of it. And if you do not, then I may just have to arrest you.
No, use that.
What do you mean?
And you've got to have an operator's licence, haven't you?
Yeah.
Have you got it?
Yeah, of course I have.
You've got an operator's licence.
Can you show
Operator's ID, it's called.
Huh?
Operator's ID, it's called.
Yeah, you have to show it.
Why?
Because we're going to require it. Is it shown on the drone?
You're going to require it for what?
So if you're flying a drone,
Yeah.
which is not a toy,
Yeah.
or is over 250 grams, and I suggest that's probably not a toy if it's got a video thing on it.
249 gram.
So is that your... Yeah, but if it's over 250 grams,
Which is
not a toy,
Yeah.
and I suggest with all that, that's probably not a toy.
Yeah.
So it does have to have an operator's licence.
Correct.
So have you got your operator's licence, and is it stamped on it?
Do you think that I don't have one?
No, it's got to be stamped on it, and you've got to be able to show it to us.
Yeah, if you suspect me of a crime.
No, it's on the civil aviation stuff. So if you've got it and you're flying it,
Yeah.
then you should be able to demonstrate your operator's ID and have it stamped on that.
And if you suspect me of a crime, then I have to show you.
That is the law.
No, it's not.
It is.
No, it's not.
Yeah.
No.
A sergeant's demand for a drone operator ID is only valid if there's a clear legal basis behind it. Simply saying "because I asked" doesn't activate any statutory power. Unless a specific offense or reasonable suspicion is identified, the demand isn't enforceable that I end that situation. Compliance is optional, not mandatory. The issue isn't tone or authority. It's the lack of justification that if an officer can't clearly explain the power they're relying on, they're not really using it, just asserting it.
Should we have a look?
Yeah, let's have a look.
Oh, fantastic.
Have you got an operator's licence?
Yeah, of course I have, yeah.
Cool. All right. It's got to be stamped on it.
Well,
It's got to be shown on
by
it.
you asking for it suggests that you think I've committed an offence.
No, just if you're flying
You can't just take one point out of the legislation.
No,
and then...
if you're flying it.
I'm not flying it.
That is the... No, but you were.
No one.
Oh, we've had multiple people come in saying you were.
Well, I haven't.
Really?
Yeah.
Okay, well, I suspect you were.
You suspect I was?
Yes.
So you
Because I've had
suspect-
multiple people come in and say that you were.
So you suspect
And
I
I
was
don't
flying the
think they
drone?
just made that up.
Well, they did. So you suspect,
did, okay.
So you suspect I was flying the drone and committing an offence?
No, I suspect you were flying the drone.
Yeah, to tell you about it.
You do?
No, I don't.
Yes, because I can require to see that.
Under what law?
I just told you, it's there.
What section?
I can look it up.
Yeah, let's have a look.
But I'm not going to, because I'm going to just require this of it. And if you do not,
Yeah.
then I may just have to arrest you under that offence.
Well, if you're going to arrest me, then I'll give you it, but I will speak to my solicitor afterwards.
Fine.
Yeah.
All right. So are you refusing to
No, I'm not
provide
refusing.
that? Okay, fantastic.
Just so you know,
Go on.
I've been through this before.
Yeah, I know.
Last time I got £3,500.
Okay.
Okay, so you still want to go down this route?
So I want to go down the route of proving that you're legally using that drone.
Yeah, I am.
Okay, but you need to show it to us. You need to show that proof that you are legally using
Under
that
what
drone.
law?
Under that law.
This law?
Yeah.
The sergeant's reliance on the Air Traffic Management Act actually backfires in this situation that a third-party complaint alone doesn't create reasonable suspicion. Under the law, he must point to clear, objective grounds that an offense has occurred. Instead of identifying the correct section, he defaults to threatening arrest, which is improper. Arrest is a serious power that must be based on evidence, not uncertainty. This interaction shows how policing by demand falls apart when challenged by an informed individual.
And what section?
I don't know what section. Well, we can look it up.
If you've got it, why don't you just shout to us?
So,
Fantastic. Cool. Yeah, we need to actually...
we want it to jot it down.
We need to see that it's linked to you and not just someone else's drone and just a code on it. We need to
I am
see.
giving you my details.
So we need to see that you've got an operator's ID.
Yeah.
And that it's the same as the one on the drone.
Yeah.
Okay. And we need to know that that operator's ID that you show us is actually yours and
It
not
doesn't have to be mine. It doesn't have to be mine.
It does. You
No, it
have
does
to
not.
have an operator's ID.
No, I don't.
Yes, you
The
do.
operator of the person who owns...
Operator's the drone.
Yeah, so there's a difference between the operator
Yes.
and the flyer. So there's a flyer ID and there's an operator ID.
No, you're operating it.
No.
Yeah, I think
No,
we're getting
no.
into a semantic argument.
No.
There. You're operating it.
The
If you're-
operator
if
is
you're
the person that owns
controlling
it.
You're operating it at that point.
The operator is the person that owns it.
No.
Yes.
No. Otherwise, it'd be the owner.
No. Operator is the person that's responsible for the drone, owns the drone, and you have a flyer.
No.
Yes, there's two different things. A flyer ID, operator
Flyer
ID.
ID and operator ID are two separate things.
Exactly.
You're absolutely correct.
Yeah.
But an operator ID is from the person who's actually operating the drone at
No,
that time.
that's not true.
It's not the same as a flyer ID.
That's not true.
No, it's not. I suggest you read the legislation again, Sergeant.
Once the threat of arrest pressures him into showing the operator ID, the focus shifts in a way that exposes confusion rather than clarity. the sergeant starts insisting the ID must be directly tied to the individual in front of him, which isn't how the system works. Under Civil Aviation Authority rules, the operator ID is linked to the registered operator, the person responsible for the drone, not necessarily proof of identity in the way the officer is demanding that it's about accountability for the aircraft not acting as a personal ID document. By continuing to push that point after the ID is already produced, the interaction moves away from a legitimate check. .it starts to look like an attempt to retrofit justification onto an earlier demand. At that stage, it's no longer about verifying compliance, that it's about trying to validate an intervention that wasn't properly grounded to begin with.
Just to protect your sergeant, if you go onto Google and put drone, Oversight police station, you'll see me in the papers.
Yeah.
Right? I was arrested for this exact same thing.
Okay.
Right? And I was released without charge, and they paid me a lot of money for it. So just protect your sergeant a little bit, you know what I mean?
Yeah, no, but we still would need to confirm that operator ID is valid and linked to an actual person who's the operator rather than just some.
But I don't have to tell you who the operator is.
But we would need to confirm that drone.
And how would you confirm that?
Well,
unless I told you who owns the drone.
Well,
because it's just a code.
Yeah, so because how would otherwise I would know that you've not just written some random digits on a bit of paper?
That's why, if you suspect me of an offence,
which would be flying the drone without an operator's ID.
Do you suspect that though?
Well, actually, I actually don't, because I think you generally wouldn't be silly enough to do it, and you show me there is a code on it.
Yeah.
But of course, how can I?
But you would also have to have reasonable suspicion. For instance,
the fact that you're not confirming
I'm
that
walking
code
down.
is valid.
I'm walking down the street.
Or allow me to see it.
I'm walking down the street. I could have a weapon in my pocket.
Yeah.
Right.
There's a whole
you don't know.
thing.
You don't know unless you search me.
Yeah, but
no. Let me finish, sir.
But he did the same example earlier, and I said actually that's a bad example.
It's a very good.
It's a calculated move when NNY invites the second officer to step in, that IT gives someone else the chance to reassess before the situation escalates into something legally risky. These pointing to a simple reality. Taking someone into custody without solid, defensible grounds is a serious gamble, that if the justification isn't clear and evidence-based, it opens the door to complaints or civil action. Meanwhile, the sergeant stays focused on obtaining personal details. He hasn't properly justified that. Misses the key point. Reasonable suspicion isn't flexible or optional. It has to be grounded in specific, objective facts. Without that foundation, the entire interaction shifts from lawful enforcement to unnecessary risk for the officers involved.
The example of someone driving along.
No, because there's legislation.
As in 163. But as an equivalent thing, you're using a piece of machinery which should be registered.
Yeah.
Okay.
Correct.
And I just want to check that the registration
and unless you suspect me of an offence, you cannot ask me to land it, and you cannot ask for the operator's ID. Those are the two things you cannot do.
I didn't ask you to land it.
I know you didn't, but I'm just saying those are the two things you can't do.
But I should
unless you suspect me of an offence.
Operator is valid.
If you suspect me of an offence.
No, because otherwise, how can I check that operator ID is valid? And if you won't show the operator ID is valid, then I potentially suspect it's just a false operator ID.
Yeah. Either I'm wrong and you're right, and you don't know the legislation, then you shouldn't come out. Or I'm right and you're wrong, and you don't know the legislation, and you shouldn't come out.
Okay.
Do you see what I mean?
So I think you've deliberately goaded people.
No.
Because we had a lot of complaints. We had multiple people coming to the station.
And not one of you said hello. What's going on? Are you okay?
I came along after
you came out.
Talking to people.
Mate, you came out in force.
No,
you came out in force. Started talking about maybe arresting me.
No, that
potentially.
was later on in the conversation.
It was what? Sorry.
That was later on in the conversation. When I was saying I couldn't confirm that their ID is correct, which I still can't. But you said that you finished and you're going to move on. So I don't feel I need to sort of.
I didn't say I was finished. I was going to move on.
He did. Sorry.
The sergeant ends up stuck in a loop, demanding credentials without ever identifying a clear breach to justify that demand. His authority hinges on pointing to a specific, provable violation. And without that, the entire interaction lacks foundation. It becomes obvious the officers arrived with a conclusion already formed, rather than assessing the situation first. Leading with hostility, instead of a neutral inquiry, only reinforces that impression. When a supervisor can't clearly reference the rule, or power they're relying on, it undermines credibility. At that point, it doesn't look like enforcement. It looks like assumption being pushed as fact. That's what ties the whole interaction together. Without a defined offense and proper articulation of powers, the process isn't grounded in law. It's driven by presumption.
Suspicion suggests that I don't have an operator's ID.
Yes, but the fact that you're refusing to provide the operator's ID
before you ask. Before you ask.
I did ask.
No, before you ask, you have to have reasonable suspicion of an offence. Before you ask.
Right.
Not after you ask, not during the conversation, not just because I don't want to talk to you.
Right.
Before you ask, reasonable suspicion before you speak to the person. Unless they're driving a car, and you've got 163, we can stop anyone for no reason.
It's just an example, yeah. Okay.
And it's any offence though, any offence.
The issue is, and I'll be honest with you, it's because we had so many people come into the station office, we probably had multiple officers getting told about this.
Yeah.
There's offences around the drone stuff, okay?
And what offence do you think it is?
Well, like I said, would be flying a drone without the operator.
But you've already told me that you believe I've got one.
Yeah.
So now you can't go with that now. If I set it off now, you couldn't go with that.
I haven't.
Okay, just let you know that I'm airspace clear, following the rules, got the required insurance and got an operator's ID.
Which is what I was asking.
So there'd be the question, did you reasonably suspect that though?
Yeah, because I was having this conversation.
Was it reasonable to suspect that someone that you've never spoke to before, never met, never inspected the drone, doesn't have an operator's ID? Is that reasonable?
Yes.
No, it's not.
So the reason why I'd say...
It's not though, is it? Go on.
Right. The reason I say it's reasonable, I say the laws have recently changed and updated. Not everybody does keep themselves au fait with the law.
The sergeant flips the process on its head, treating refusal to provide ID as the reason to justify intervention. That's a clear misunderstanding. Grounds have to exist before any demand, not be created by resisting it. Legal thresholds rely on reasonable suspicion of a specific offense, not on someone's willingness to cooperate. Refusal alone doesn't generate suspicion, and it certainly doesn't fill gaps in a weak case. By treating non-cooperation as proof, he's trying to manufacture justification. After the fact, that's exactly what gets exposed when NNY pushes back. You can't create legal cause out of silence. And once that becomes clear, the only option left is to step back because the foundation for action was never there.
I was wrong on, and it's obviously been clarified by yourself and my colleague there.
Well, brilliant.
And while you were talking, I was quickly having a flick through, and yes, I did confirm that. Well, I'd have to have the person's name who has actually got that operator ID.
Right.
So yeah, person. But then.
And if I didn't know the name?
Well, then, if I suspected an offence, then I'd potentially arrest in order to try and confirm that name. Because the arrest would be to investigate further to confirm that.
Oh, that's dirty.
And I suspect that most people who use drones actually aren't using them lawfully, sadly, because they're quite easy to get hold of.
That's sad that you think that. That's really sad that you think that, and I genuinely disagree with you. I really am genuinely offended, and I'm sure there will be many people online that are also offended.
If you're being offended as a drone user, then I think there's elements of offence that you need to kind of reconsider.
I mean, there's a massive community that will definitely disagree with you.
I'm sure there's a massive
and will
community.
be genuinely offended that a police sergeant thinks that the majority of drone flights are unlawful. So the National Police Chief Council have even said the majority of flights are lawful, and we want to facilitate those lawful flights, but counter the unlawful flights. This is not an unlawful flight. I've not even taken off.
Multiple people that said you were flying a drone.
But you'd not seen it, just because someone said it, don't mean it's true. You should probably go speak to those people and say, why did you lie to me?
Well, I've got no reason to say they did lie to me. However, we've discussed it with you, so we've bottomed out that.
But I wasn't flying.
Okay.
So multiple people have told you I was flying, is that what you said?
Unfortunately, yeah.
So they've lied to you. You all need to shut up and get back in the station.
Watching a senior officer pull out his phone mid-interaction to check the law doesn't inspire confidence. It suggests he wasn't clear on the rules before acting. In a role like that, decisions are expected to be grounded in a solid understanding of the relevant powers and limits. The bigger issue is the assumption he starts with that the drone activity must be unlawful, rather than testing whether it actually breaches any regulation. That flips the process from evidence-led to assumption-led, which is where things begin to unravel. Referencing guidance matters here that if frameworks like National Police Chiefs Council guidance already acknowledge that filming or similar activity from public spaces can be lawful, then acting against it without clear grounds shows a disconnect between policy and practice. The point about a potentially false report under Criminal Law Act 1967 Section 5 is interesting, but it would still require clear evidence of intent to mislead, not just a mistaken complaint. What ultimately stands out is how the situation ends. No enforcement, no follow-through, just disengagement. That tends to indicate the initial approach wasn't built on firm legal footing, and once that becomes clear, there's nothing left to sustain it. If you found value in this breakdown, make sure you like the video, share it, and subscribe to support the channel, and help keep this kind of accountability in the spotlight.